Let's talk about it.
Hi everyone, welcome to Thicc Radio, the gaming podcast where we take a deep dive into gamer culture and everything in orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim. Let's get into it. Today we're joined by a special guest. You know them, you love them. It's Keoki.
Hey baby, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Oh, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us and being our very first guest.
It's good. I'm excited. I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited to see where this goes. Like, this is going to be amazing. And I feel like this is exactly like what this community really needs, is like just some kind of like, you know, uniformity and like what we're trying to do and like how this community can be better. So I'm just really excited.
Thank you so much for that. It's been a humbling process, even from the jump of announcing it, the working on it process, just the people we were talking to, yourself included, of course, just, is this a good idea? What do you think? Like, can we do something with this? And people's attitude has been so positive, and it really feels like now is the right time for this. So, bitch, I'm ready.
I completely echo what James said. You know, I was really overwhelmed by the support for this idea. And I have to mention, too, that I'm still very touched by the support that I got for my first initial run with a podcast doing the Gaining Perspective, what positive feedback I got for that. I've told James many times, I'm just one well-meaning idiot that wants to try to spread some positivity. So, and I didn't realize, I don't think either of us realized how much the community really needed this right now. So it's awesome to actually get this going.
I think with everything happening last year, I think it just really kind of reiterated the fact that we really needed something like this.
No,
you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. Everyone's stuck at home, so we don't even have Grommr or other social events. We don't even have friends that we might have made in person that we can actually just go and see and kiki with. We have a website, other forums that we normally talk to people on, and we have social interaction online, which is taxing at the best of times.
Yeah.
But a year and a half now for some of us into this shit, it's just, So.
I love how you said taxing at the best of times, because it's toxic at the worst of times, which is great because that's exactly what we're talking about today.
Keoki, our guest, what has been your experiences so far with toxicity in the community?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I feel like we've all kind of found ourselves on both sides of that fence. You know, we have to, sometimes our emotions get the better of us, and we just kind of get lost in our emotions and what's really happening. And then it's the opposite side of that, it's you are keeping yourself in check, and it's it's constant work, it's constant effort, and you're learning, you're growing, you're doing things. So I feel like my experience with being, in toxic environments, it kind of when people kind of come off as cold or rude or whatever, it's am I reading into this too much? Or maybe this is just whatever. It's just them, their personality, it's just how they're portraying themselves or whatever. So it's I find myself constantly thinking, if I'm overthinking about something like this, or reading too far into it, or maybe, at what point does it really become toxic? Because just having a shitty attitude is having a shitty attitude. But, when you are going out of your way to damage somebody's mental health, that's when, that's exactly when it becomes a huge problem.
Absolutely. Definitely. Tim, what do you...
I actually think that's a really good working definition of toxic behavior, is when the words that you choose, the attitude that you're putting out there is actually affecting the mental and emotional state of someone else. And this is something that no one is immune from. I mean, yes, I'm a little bit older than I think both of you, but and I've been exposed to plenty of toxic behavior over the years, and it still affects me. It's not something that I think ever goes away. sometimes you learn tips and tricks to ignore it or get past it. But I mean, if you're being bombarded with it, which it seems like a lot of gainers are being bombarded with it right now, it's hard to deal with.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, it's probably going to sound like the fat nerd in me, but like Toxicity makes me think of Toxic, which is a move that you can use in Pokemon. It's a poison type move. And literally what it does is it affects your enemy so that they're wounded a little bit, but every single turn they lose a little bit more health. And there are things you can do to cure it, etc. But if it's left unchecked, that Pokemon will faint and they will be out for the rest of the battle. And I think that's a very good concept behind what Toxic actually does do to us as people. It doesn't necessarily hit like the most painful or obvious thing a lot of the time, but sometimes it really is something that just like embeds itself into our emotional state, our spiritual state, our mental state, and eventually you just find yourself sprawled out on the bed looking at the ceiling going, why did I wake up today? And it's all because some bitch made some comment and it just got to you, you know? And maybe we look past it because it doesn't seem like an obvious thing, but maybe that's our challenge, to be more aware of those moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just nodding at me like, wow.
I'm just, my brain is going to this Gorilla Glue situation that's completely unrelated, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. What is it? Silence of the Lambs?
Only in the United States would something like that happen.
Not just once, but yeah.
Oh my God. Truly though, like I hear some stories and I just sit here and I'm like, America, are y'all okay?
No.
Every time something really idiotic winds up in the news, I always think of Eddie Izzard because he's one of my favorite comedians. And he said, like in one of his stand-up acts, he's like, we're all over here in Europe looking at you guys like, what are you doing?
Truly though, it happens more often than you think. I think it comes on the local news and it's just like, yes, in the United States today, and I just brace myself going, in the United States today, what? Did they like
what now?
Did they just legalize like just putting babies in blenders because it's like the newest health trend? Like what is it? What is it now, America? What do you want?
It's like a constant state of like one-upping something else.
The constant, oh, you thought that was it? Hold my except in America, hold my Bud Light half of -1% beer that's literally just green water because we're terrified of alcohol and fat content.
I have this theory that America's got such a Napoleon complex because America is like the only country where it's like dick is sticking out always. Because like if you think of Florida as its dick, like its dick is always out. So it's always got something to prove.
So that means that all the gross people in Florida are literally just smeg. They are.
I mean, as a former Floridian, I can attest to this.
Oh my goodness.
Recovered Floridian, I should say.
Recovered Floridian. I love that. Is there a rehabilitation program for Floridians?
Leather bars, whiskey, and fun.
Do you know what? That actually sounds like a fucking fantastic night out, and I cannot wait for a night out.
I know it's gonna be incredible when we're all able to like go back and like be alive again in a sense, you know.
And you know, it's funny. We're having this cool little tete-a-tete about how we want the world to go back to being. We're all wanting to go out drinking and having fun in like gay nightclubs and stuff, but there's toxicity even in the gay community.
Oh my God, yes.
Like,
yeah.
As an Australian living in England, I am an immigrant. I know a lot of people like to try and say expat. I find that word extremely classist, racist, problematic, because you find that people of color are always called immigrants, but white people are expats. No, hon.
I have a question. Like, I feel like a lot of Americans will fetishize people that have accents or, you know, like just will fetishize anybody that's not from here.
Right.
Like, has that ever, like, is that something that you've gone through before?
I mean, it's certainly a point of intrigue. A lot of people go, oh, I was Australian. Oh my God. You know, and I say, wait, I've got it. I've got this. Good day, mate. And I just imagine that they're on the other end, just coming bucket loads going, oh! you know. I assume that that's how it works. But like the Aussie inferences don't really bother me. I think it's fun. Like I like people wanting to engage in my culture, even if they have a hard dick for it. Like have a hard dick for my culture. You know, like
do you ever though, like, do you ever have someone who's just like really socially inept and like douchey and is like trying to do your accent back to you? Like, oh, you're Australian. Okay, well, good day, mate. Throw another shrimp on the barbie. I love Crocodile Dundee.
First of all, I love that. I actually love terrible accents. It's kind of like part of my love for camp queens, my camp drag queens. Like I love it when it's done well, but I also love it when it's done fucking bad. I think it's incredible. And I also just love people making an effort. To me, I'm like, do it again. Like, I'll even give pointers where I'm like, the sound you're trying to conquer there is no, 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 no. You know, like, I think it's funny. I mean, there are probably other people who get weird about it, but if there is anything that I would say is offensive, I think it's the whole when people try to assume that Antipodean types, Australians, New Zealanders, people from Polynesia, even people from like South Africa usually, like where people just try to lump us into one category, like we come from the one place, we have one culture. You know, our indigenous people, you know, they're all just shoot-offs of each other when they're not. You know, they have such different languages. We all have different accents and cultures and vibes. Like, it's more that than anything else. It's the eradication of the nuances more so than anything else.
Yeah.
But what about you guys? Like, Keoki, you are deliciously melanated. I would envision, you know, just to put the concept out there, that perhaps you might have experienced fetishizzations on that level. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah, it's happened. I mean, like, more so now that I've been, because I used to kind of like just keep to myself in like the gainer community, like, you know, and then it's like, you know, well, obviously once you start blowing up, it's like, you know, everybody's trying to talk to you. Everyone's got something to say. And it's just like, I, at the same time, want to just share myself and just have fun. Like, that's really all it is. Like, I don't want to engage too far into anything to where it's becoming now like an obligation. But I think the thing that bothers me the most is like when people are like, oh, like I love Latinos. And it's like, fun fact, the people that say that they love Latinos generally can't handle Latino, like, stereotypical behaviors, like fiery, you know. And so it's like, I mean, that's just for me, like, because I tend to be a little bit sassy and witty, and I feel like a lot of people are like kind of put off by that, but sometimes I feel like it's just humor. But you know, it's like I can't speak Spanish, so I don't know how that works for me. Like, as a Latino person, like you have this idea of like this version of a Latino person, and I'm basically white with just a cute facade. I actually find that like more people are intrigued at the part of me being Hawaiian, like my other half, like the other half of me being Hawaiian. People are like more intrigued by that.
So you're part Polynesian then?
But yeah, essentially.
Yeah, work, Diva. Love that. So do you connect then with that Polynesian side of yourself, or is that...
I actually, like, I have been exploring all of that, like, in quarantine, like, over the last few, you know, like, the last year or so. Like, I've been really wanting to get in touch with that part of me, you know, because I feel like, I think part of it for me was the realization when they were trying to, you know, have Puerto Rico become like another state or whatever. I don't really know exactly the details on that, but it kind of almost instantly like made me upset, because I'm like, wow, like look what happened to the Hawaiian people. Like, you know, we became part of the United States at one point, and then our culture is suddenly like heavily diminished. You know, it's like it's either become whitewashed, or, you know, it's just become kind of like a joke, you know, like a,
Yeah, I mean, it's really screwed up. I mean, when you look into the history of how Hawaii was stolen from, it was a sovereign nation before it was annexed by the United States, and it took the princess of Hawaii going to the president at the time and begging for her people, to make them citizens and to give them the right to own property and the right to vote. And the white landowners, like, the Dole family, which there's some controversy over whether or not Dole actually helped or hindered the whole process. But, those were the white people in power who did not want the natives to have any control over their own destiny. And yeah, it's a really screwed up story. So they actually made a really good movie about it called Princess Kaiulani.
I that. I must put that on my viewing list.
I just felt like a, some kind of like level of tragedy with my connection to Puerto Rico and like my connection to Hawaii. It's like, I just didn't really want to see it like kind of happen all over again.
Yeah.
Especially like we're in such a modern time where we could be doing so much better. And like not helping Puerto Rico after, what was it, an earthquake or a hurricane?
The Hurricane Maria.
Like that was a huge issue for me. Like,
it's just horrible.
It's like I feel like, I fall under like indigenous people, you know what I mean? Like, and when the pipeline thing was going on, years ago, or still, I don't really keep up with stuff. I can only handle so much mentally, So it's like, I just see like so many people in pain, and it's just like, how long is this going to go on before somebody stops it? Like, at what capacity is it going to, it needs to stop. Like this kind of, it's just the behavior. It's like toxicity has become such a like normal type of like ingrained, like you said, like it's just so embedded.
It's become normalized. It's become perfectly acceptable to walk up to a total stranger and tell them that you don't like them and list all these reasons why you don't like them, and then try to take things away from them. It's not that it wasn't there before. It's just that before 2016, it was not considered polite conversation. Society still had some civility to it, and people, it was the old adage of if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
But then people in power began saying whatever the hell they wanted with no consequences. They were not held accountable, and that made it perfectly acceptable for the general public to do it.
So when that was all like, 2017, 2018 goes by, we're developing cancel culture at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I get weird with like the whole term with cancel culture, because I feel like people are like, yes, people need to be held accountable for their behaviors. Like, I was talking about Marilyn Manson the other day, and I had said, we can't be supporting people that are going to be like that. Like point blank, like they don't deserve to have a platform.
Something that I was also thinking of in relation to, you said there's so much that's going on, how do we even process it all? It's the concept of bandwidth. Like, Tim, you and I were talking about this just the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something we need to do as people is acknowledge publicly what is our bandwidth. Meaning, how much emotional energy do I have to spare on everything else today? If you're someone with high bandwidth, maybe you're someone who, if you're having a down day and you need to talk to someone, talk to the person with the high energy bandwidth, because that person can take your shit today. That person can hold you, share that load with you, and help lift you up, right? But someone with a low energy bandwidth, do not go to that person and talk about how I'm really struggling today and I need someone. I'm not that person today. No. X.
I mean, even furthermore, like being like an empath, like sometimes it's really hard for me to like, talk to people about their problems, because then I feel like I'm like absorbing it in a way.
Yeah.
And then like it'll just be a little seed and it just finds its way in there and just plants itself. And then I'm like, the next 3 days I'm going to be thinking about this. And so like it's renting head in my space now.
Yeah.
Renting space in my head. What did
I think it's the
Sorry, what?
I do that all the time.
When things live in your head rent free. So that it's not paying rent, it's just taking up space and being there for shits and giggles. Gen Z be coming out the gate right now. They're like, I'm 15, I don't have a sexuality, and I am ready to fucking cut Donald Trump's dick off. They are just like ready to like punch their grandma in the tits for racist comments. They are ready to like literally set fire to buildings. Like, I look at Gen Z and I'm like,
I love the energy, but
what?
I love that energy, but like we need to like box it up for right now.
It's fine. We can edit that out. That's fine.
No. I was just saying, like, Gen Z's like that whole like, oh fuck it, like I'm just gonna go, and it's like you really have barely any knowledge of like life problems. Maybe
like that, though. they haven't been affected enough by life's bullshit to like lose that sense of zeal yet. So I'm like, listen, kids, you were eating Tide Pods for a minute, and I was a little concerned. But you turned out okay.
What was that about? You know, every time I see one of these horror stories about teenagers drinking Purell or eating Tide Pods, I'm just like, whatever happened to raiding your parents' liquor cabinet?
Yep.
Whatever happened to that? I mean, you know, I pulled some stupid shit as a teenager when I was in high school. Like, I got day drunk a couple of times, but I never once looked at a Tide Pod and said, let's see what happens. Or I never looked at the bottle of hand sanitizer and said, I bet that's pure alcohol.
Now, mind you, I used to work in healthcare, and I think I've told you this story already. I worked in a healthcare organization where we would send nurses out to clients' homes because I was dealing with clients who like lived at home and had like nursing support and stuff. One day a nurse came back and she had just like her arms full of like hand sanitizer and all this kind of alcohol cleaning products. And we were all like, what is going on? She looked very flustered and very much not okay. And when she finally went, and like dumped it all down and like put it all away and came over to talk to us, she was like, let's call her Smith. Mrs. Smith, I arrived at her house to do her dressing, and she was on her 5th bottle of hand sanitizer, like to her lips. They were emptied. She was.
That's an old school alcoholic. That's an old school alcoholic.
I mean, I feel like if that were the case, like, I mean, get Listerine. I mean, I feel like that's at least a little bit better. Like if that desperate for
it gives you a minty. What's that one that I always hear about? Like Quaaludes. Is it
Quaaludes, NyQuil, you know, anything that contains basically the same thing that's in Benadryl will give you that drunk feeling, because most of those medicines contain the same thing that's in Benadryl.
So look, I love this. I want to ask you, Keoki, because we're talking about toxicity. We're also talking about the gaming community. We've touched on it a little bit. I want to ask you, what specific acts do you think toxicity looks like in the gaming community?
I mean, like for me, it's always been like people telling me what I need to post or whatever, or like, you know, saying like, oh, I'm not big enough, or like, you know, you don't answer my messages, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what I mean? Like it gets kind of crazy. And it's like, I don't have a huge following. I think I have like a little over 1,200, which I mean, it's a lot, but you know, like, and on Grommr, I have like 2,100 or something. So it's like at some point, like you upload a picture and then you have like 18 messages and like 50,000 fucking notifications. And yes, of course, I appreciate the attention. You know, I'm not going to lie on here and say like I'm on Instagram, you know, I don't care about the attention. No, it's like I do like that. Like it feels nice to be appreciated. But I'm not specifically doing it for attention. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. You're sharing your journey. These are the platforms to do it on.
Yeah.
You really just want someone to edify you. You don't need someone to say, you make my dick hard and wet. You really just kind of want someone to give you a thumbs up, ruffle your hair and say, you did good, kid. And you could be like, thanks. That's literally it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Tim, you've been around a minute. Like, what has been your experience with like interactions and feedback? I'm sorry, Keoki, was that?
You sounded like that was a little shady. It's fine. It's cute.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm old and I don't care.
Now she knows she's old, but you want to know what's shady? The amount of times in conversation Tim will be like, "Do you remember when we were young?" And I'm like, We.
Well,
I
you're
don't
not
know,
that
we just-
I mean, you're only you're a decade younger than I am.
Yes, that's true.
All
I mean,
right.
and to be fair, like I would argue, even within that, like there is still a lot of overlap with like childhood experiences. I feel like I'm also
There
very
is.
ageless as a person. Like I'm actually 28, but I don't know. Like I kick it and kiki with people of all age brackets. But
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. I mean, I'm turning 30 this year, so it's kind of like,
Oh God, you're a
holy
baby.
shit! Like my knees could give out at any fucking moment. But
It's all downhill from here, girl.
I hope not. I got vitamins and stuff, and I'm trying to like, take better care of myself.
Because I'll be walking around work and be like, "Ooh, my back hurting. Ooh, my knees is hurting. Oh, damn, my feet are killing me."
I've noticed that ever since lockdown, I've become that person who I have to get up, but I can't get up unless I go. And
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time.
scientifically, I've looked this up. It doesn't do anything. It's not even a placebo effect. It's just somehow it triggers my brain. Oh, if I'm in agony in this movement, I better help this poor fat old cow onto his hooves so he can clickety clack on with his day. But
I was going to say, I kind of think that I maybe I approach this maybe a little bit differently than you guys might, because I actually don't mind being objectified. I don't mind being fetishized. I do expect people to remember that I'm a human and that I have emotions and that things can still get to me, but for some reason, it's never bothered me to be objectified. I think it's because when I was a twink, when I was in my early 20s, and I was going out to dance clubs every weekend, and I was around all the Twinkie crowd, I was largely ignored, invisible. No one ever tried to ingratiate me into anything. So when I began the gaining journey and I started to get the attention, it was kind of like, well, this is all new for me because that never happened before. But I still get instances of toxic things like Keoki was saying, where people will DM me, usually on Instagram now, because I don't spend a ton of time on Grommr like I used to. But on Instagram, I'll get a message like, "Hey, Piggy," which I've never really liked that nickname anyway. But, "Hey, Piggy, what are you doing?" "Well, I'm working." "Are you eating?" "Well, no, I'm working." "Well, you should be eating." "Well, no, I'm working."
Mm-hmm.
And then, criticisms about like, "Oh, you need to be bigger. Why aren't you eating more?" And then also because I think I am the smallest of the three of us on here right now, because I am large enough to get attention, but I'm not large enough to get the kind of attention that, say, like Keoki gets, or another like really sort of well-known gainer on Grommr gets, because I'm not on the bigger sizes. My belly is round and it's reasonably large, but it's not on the level of some other gainers.
Yeah.
And I will get compared to like, "Oh, you should try to be like Gamerology. You should try to be like," just as an example, like that's what people will say, "Oh, this is what you should be aspiring to." It just gets into your head, man. Like I was at one point like weighing myself every day and getting disappointed that the scale wasn't going up, because I don't gain weight easily.
Yeah.
And I realized what I was doing to myself. I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why am I sitting here obsessing over it?
And that's why, honestly, like taking breaks, like I understand, like, people have like issues about like, oh, this isn't an airport. You don't have to make a proclamation for your departure. Like, I get it. But it's like, from my standpoint, it's like I do care, like I care about the people that I have gotten close with, on Instagram and Grommr. But like with the issue with like, should there be like gainer pronouns at this point? Like should that even be a thing? Like
gainer pronouns like gainer, encourager, feeder, that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, like if you don't want to be addressed as Piggy, like, you know what I mean? Like just.
I see. Well, I mean, I would also argue people shouldn't be
just throwing it around.
They shouldn't be assuming, like, yes, the old adage is assuming makes an ass out of you and me, but like, it's true. Like, you should not assume that someone is going to consent to something that you haven't already agreed on, like this can almost come under the concept of like people having issues with just communicating. Like it's kind of like a rule number one. Like if you want to get to know someone and you want to have some kind of a connection, right? Like that's the goal. Even if the connection is sex, That's still a connection. So why are you going into this like trying to slap this dude in the face with your like sloppy dick, like piggy, like you don't know. You don't know. And you straight up don't. Like the amount of instances I've had where I'm just sitting there and I have to correct a dude and he's like, well, you're not being any fun. It's not my job to be fun for you right now, mate.
Yeah.
Like, you haven't even said hi? Like you clearly don't care. Like there's a myriad of issues. But what I'm appreciating so far in this conversation, we've said, so there's things on bandwidth, declaring bandwidth is good. Taking breaks, I think, is good. And I also think declaring is good.
I was wondering, do you guys think, because the bulk of this is happening on a social media platform of some kind, because, like we said, we're in a pandemic right now, so everyone has to be home and everyone's attached to their phones, going on their Instagrams and their Twitters, their Grommr apps, that the fact that we're all so detached from one another makes it that much easier to be this troll behind a keyboard.
Oh, absolutely.
When you don't have to see the effect of what you've said or done, it just kind of, I feel like, does that open the door to just be like, well, it doesn't matter because this is just an image on a screen to me. I don't have to see this as a person.
I definitely completely agree with all of that, honestly, because like how you were saying, like there was a time where I had felt invisible in the gay community and I was like, oh fuck, like I really don't think I have a place to like fit in here. And turns out, obviously, like I was looking in all the wrong places. I find Grommr and I'm like, this is me, this is what I want to be, like this is my lifestyle. And it just kind of really sucks to see like an already marginalized group of people just kind of double down on it. It's disheartening. And like sometimes I even still feel invisible, like even have it, like, just seeing all these notifications and all these like nice messages from people, it still feels like I can be this invisible person because I'm not having any, there's like a huge lack of like just genuine kind of like vibes, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I mean, if that makes any sense, like
it does.
It does. Yeah. So here's a question then. You say genuine vibes. What does genuine look like to you? What does genuine feel like to you in terms of connections with people on an online basis? Because I would imagine online is very difficult because you can read a person as much as you want based on how they text. And even right now, you and I, all of us, we have a sense of who each other is based on what we can see and what we can hear. But it's not until you meet someone in person that you really sit around and go, that's the truth of the person that we're trying to get to. Mm-hmm. So with all of that considered,
sorry, cough.
It's all good. With all of that considered, what does genuine online interaction look and feel like to you?
To me, I feel like it's definitely like if you're asking me things outside of the gainer lifestyle, like if you're, asking, how I'm doing, like, because, I had said some stuff because I had like lost a friend of mine. And so like, it was a really rough period for me this last few weeks. And, I've been managing really, really well. And like, I do have a lot of people that do care, that do ask me like how I'm doing. Some people like I've actually like reconnected with, and it's been really enjoyable. And like, I feel like if you say like, oh, like, like I've missed you, there's that kind of genuine kind of like behavior, I guess, like, because again, I do miss people. Everyone misses someone,
Yeah.
But, like I felt like I got close to who I got close with in like, the gaining community. And like, I feel like maybe I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about it, but I feel like we have little cliques, obviously. You got the little nerdy one, all of it. And then I'm like, I felt like I was off on my own thing because I'm like, oh, I like cooking and I like poetry. And like, I've never connected with anybody on either of those things. Just.
Now, here's a point to that. You put up recently on your Instagram, you were like, you guys, I do this poetry stuff. I haven't really shared it before because I assumed that no one would be into it. And first of all, I clicked, obviously, yes, I'm interested. But, girl, it was 100% interest. The people who follow you, the people who engaged, were 100% keen to hear and see what you have to say and do.
Yeah, and I was honestly really surprised by that, because like I thought, people were going to be like, no, there's like, this just needs to be gaining stuff. Like there's no room for anything else.
I have to admit, I'm jealous that you got 100% yes on.
There was like 3 people. There was three people that said no, but
because I still get no's too on some things that kind of surprised me. I had posted like I used to be wanting to get into special effects makeup, and like I've done some experimentation with it. I've created some interesting looks, and I said, would anyone be interested in seeing me post this to the stories? Is like some of the things I've created, or maybe even do a tutorial if I want to go that far. And of course I got overwhelmingly yes. Some of the no's actually surprised me though.
Mm-hmm.
Like people I would think like, okay, so you're not interested at all in that? Like, do you seriously just want me to keep showing off my belly and that's the only thing you care about?
It's definitely interesting. Like I've been a guilty party of the whole, why do we have to talk about anything in the gaining community that isn't about gaining? Like, I come here and this is my escape and blah, 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 blah. But I also acknowledge that, at least in that moment, definitely came from like an obsessive privilege. It came from this moment of all I present of myself to this community at this point is my sex. I present my body, I present my interests. Therefore, I'm not engaged with people on a personal level. And it wasn't until I had that realization that I was like, oh, right. And now I can see that there's a need for everything in the gainer community. Because if you're going to make the argument that we're normal people doing a normal thing, which is just making ourselves feel good, then we have to acknowledge that we carry within the community the entire human spectrum of the good and the bad, which include racism, it includes ableism and homophobia and sexism. It includes privilege and classism. It includes everything under the sun and even toxicity. There's that lesson in there to remind ourselves that there's so much more to what we do than just being fat. We are literally people trying to be in the world, be good.
I feel like it kind of saddens me that we have to like constantly like remind people that like, hey, like I have a life, I do other things. I'm not just an eating machine.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment here. So, Keoki, what is it you do for work?
Well, prior to the apocalypse, I was a florist.
Yeah. So some of these, there's going to be a presumed asterisk. Like, what do you do for fun? What do you do when you go out? Like, I'm assuming this is all before COVIDina done hit the town. So before the apocalypse, you were a florist.
Yeah, and it's actually really funny how I got into that, because it just kind of like, I literally kind of like fell into it. Like I started working there just temporarily for holiday stuff, just putting up Christmas decorations for rich people. And, they, I guess, noticed me and like being creative, and like I would want to take stuff home and I would post pictures and people were like, wow, like this is really awesome. And I've always been a creative person. I thought like my creative outlet would be in a kitchen until I worked at one restaurant that was just so terrible. I mean, like, I don't know what the hell it is. Chefs and egos. I can't be bothered with that. Like, you work in a kitchen, calm down. Calm down.
Well, then Gordon Ramsay wouldn't have a show.
The only restaurant I like to refer to these days is Chili's, because of that one Vine with the kids like standing in the mirror, like, welcome to Chili's. Like, so I just assume everything is Chili's. Did you work at a Chili's? Was it?
No, it was actually a pizzeria, but it was like an elevated pizzeria.
What? So this
artisanal pizza? Is that what it was? Artisanal pizza?
Oh my god, dessert pizzas fucking kill it. Kill it with fire. Stop it now. Like, I get a pizza, I want sauce and I want pepperoni and that's it. Like, cheese, maybe. I don't want you to fuck up my cheese. Make it good cheese, goddammit. Someone's like, a Nutella spread? Jesus Christ, Susan, go away.
That's a very US thing, though, honestly. If you put artisanal in front of anything in the United States, people think, oh, this is bougie.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to move to the US and make so much fucking money just by being like, It's Australian artisanal, thank you. What we do is we take the freshest kangaroo meat and we slow broil it for about 74 days. And then we like to do a saltwater reduction. And then we like to season it, of course, with a bit of sage. Like, does that send you? Does that give it to you?
No, but there's a bunch of like idiot white people who would jizz their pants over hearing that.
I feel like people have like an attraction or like even potentially a fetish to like pretentious things. Like it just, I don't know.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I feel like that's that desire for classism. It's the desire to climb. Do you know what I call it? It's like the privilege pyramid, right? And someone made a point of this to me once. Like, all of us are made up of like 50 different things that are considered privileges. And yes, gender, race, sexuality, money, and all of that is there. But then also religion, ancestry, and literally geographical location. Like all of those add up, right? Yeah. And so like on the privilege pyramid, like the more things you've got going for you, the higher to the top you are. And there's a point to be made that the closer you are to being apex privilege, the more likely you are to be tempted and fall into power. Which means I have privilege of being white and male, but my disadvantage is being queer. But because I'm so close to being apex human, all I have to do is forego my queerness by acting straight and having a problem with femme acting fags. All I've got to do is have a love for the typical straight things and have straight mates. And, I'm the cool gay. I'm the gay that you can have as a mate and have a drink with because he's basically just one of the guys. He's not threateningly queer in the slightest. I want to put it out there to the pair of you. What do we think are some things that we can do? Because the opposite of toxicity, to be toxic, is actually to be healing, is to be building, is to be constructing, is to be educating, is to be creating. What are some things that as individuals on an individual level, regardless of followers, regardless of clout and all of it, that we can do to try to turn the tide and actually do something good instead of being toxic or even just combating toxicity? What can we do?
Honestly, I feel like it's like kind of like what I was saying before, like when I was wanting to share my poetry and, Tim wanting to share special effects makeup, because I love special effects makeup. I remember I went to work one Halloween and I had like a whole eyeball missing and like everybody freaked out about it. And I had such a good time doing that. And like, you get a fucking high. Like you get a high off that. Just that kind of like gratification or whatever. Like knowing that like you just created something and like people actually love it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to stop at just me gaining or me sharing belly pictures or me being like a pizza slut. You know what I mean? So for me, it was like, I want people to like see that I'm more of what is on Grommr. Like if you want to just look at belly stuff, that's fine. Go to Grommr for that. On my Instagram, I want to showcase like other things that I do. Like I love cooking. I love going to the market. I love that market probably way more than an average person. But I get so much happiness like being there and like looking at all these things that I can cook, and I come up with all these ideas and I just get so excited. I fangirl over food basically. That's
beautiful that you do that. Like look at the smile on your face. Viewers, when you see the video version of this, you'll see there is a smile on this bitch's face when she's talking about this motherfucking food market. So when I come visit, you're going to take me to this motherfucking food market. You understand me?
Oh my God. Yeah. There's the donut place and they have this other stuff. It's
oh my God. But that's great. Like it's the passion you have talking about that. That's a thing. Like we need more of that. Tim, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, so what I have just been doing in my own life, is that like I didn't ask to become a role model, but because I have somewhat of a following, because people are paying attention to what I'm saying and what I'm doing, I decided that I was going to be very hyper aware of what I put out there. I decided to hold myself to a particular standard. Yes. So anytime I put something on Grommr, I put something on Instagram or on Twitter, if it's not going to be gainer related, if I'm going to offer an opinion on something, if I'm going to make a personal statement, I really scrutinize it hard. And I think, is there anything I'm saying that could be misconstrued? Is there anything that I'm saying that can be taken the wrong way? Am I being insensitive? Am I potentially being racist? Am I potentially being sexist? Am I potentially being classist in what I'm saying? I want people to know that I care about this community so much, because this is my tribe.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent, this is my tribe. And I don't want anyone to point at me and say that I'm part of the problem.
Yeah.
So I'm striving, probably over striving, to just be as positive of an influence as I possibly can. And I think if more people within our community, especially those who have a pretty significant following or are pretty popular, did the same thing, it could start to turn the tide. Because the last thing that I want to see is people that I've made connections with, that I've built friendships with, tell me, you know what, I can't handle it anymore. I gotta go. I gotta delete all this stuff, and you guys won't see me ever again. Because we've driven our own community members away from within. I've been there a few times. You know, it's not even external stuff most of the time. It's within the community we're driving them away.
Yeah, I've left both in the past, and both times was because of interactions I'd have with people. And listen, maybe I was having a bad day at the time, but I remember getting messages both times and just looking at it all like, this is the straw. I am the camel, and my back is broken. I can't keep doing this. And, this is now my third time being back within the community and not taking space from it. And I remember this third time really restarting myself, going, I need to make the decision to fight tooth and nail to find my place here, because, I wouldn't keep coming back if it wasn't important to me, and this is the longest stint I've now been part of the community, and it's meant the world to me. I've made so many connections. I can't imagine not being a part of it. And the thought of there being other people who feel the same way that I've done, it actually makes me tear up a bit. It makes me emotional, because I think the hurt that they must be feeling to know that this is where they belong, but that they feel intrinsically that they cannot be in it because of problems within it. That's heartbreaking. Yeah. So I think all of those points about sharing more authenticity beyond just the gaining specific stuff and supporting people. I think something even as simple as on Instagram, there's a lot of artists emerging. I love to approach an artist and be like, can you please do a commission of me? I used to look at it and be a bit like, people keep doing that. That's a bit narcissistic. But then I thought about it. But then I thought about it. I was like, I'm actually giving money to talented gainer types to make things of me that I get to have of me. I get to celebrate me through someone else's eyes, because they're creating me. They're recreating me. And then I get this beautiful piece of artwork and I go, oh my God, that's me. They made me. And I gave them money for it. They absolutely deserve it. What are they going to do with that money? Probably put it towards themselves, to their gains, to their lives, to their growth, to everything. And you begin to realize that there is so much more to helping people grow and building people up than just jerking off to pics and buying them a pizza. You begin to realize that there's so much more to building people up than just this fetish. It doesn't mean that it detracts from the fetish to take 5 seconds to say, how are you today?
Yeah.
It just means that you're being a genuine freaking person. And it almost feels mad to have to make that point.
You would think that would be more of a common sense thing. But, the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing that common sense is a commodity that many people do not possess.
Yeah.
Sense ain't that common. And I'm hesitant these days to even engage in the concept of common sense, because, listen, we say common sense in saying something should be obvious, but that people aren't doing it. I think the implication of common sense is that everyone should have it, but I think a lot of people don't. But I also think that the reason people don't act the way we want them to is because we don't have a community of people pulling people up on their shit. We don't have a community of people saying, the way you're acting right now is kind of foolish. You need to pull your head in and act a little bit better.
I have no problem calling someone out.
But that's good. We need more of this. And listen, I think
there's definitely like a constructive way to do it. Like, you don't want to do it and like completely like obliterate somebody. Like, I will say I have done, but I've gotten older. I've gotten wiser. I've made conscious efforts to change. I've realized that like you can't just fly off and just say whatever.
Sometimes emotions run high. Yeah. Sometimes something happens to you that triggers you. Just over the fall, I think this was in October or November. No, it was in November, because it was when Biden and Harris were announced as elect to the presidency and vice presidency. And I posted a picture to Instagram stories. It was a painting of them. Like that was, I don't know who did it, but it was very pretty. And I posted it and I said, you know what? I feel like I can breathe a little bit easier now. Someone decided to message me asking me, what are you talking about? So I could tell from the initial text, I was like, I don't know it seemed a little hostile just from what they wrote back. But I said, you know what, I'm going to take the higher ground and I'm going to try to make this a teachable moment. So, I explained, well, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I was raised a Democrat. I have always voted blue. I believe that they are a better option for the future. So I explained all this, and then they came back with, voting doesn't have anything to do with breathing. And I was like, okay, clearly the intent is hostile. So I wrote them back like, are you intending to mock me or not? Because if you're intending to mock me, the conversation's not going to go any further. They baited me a little bit more, and it kept going back and forth. And finally, it became very clear that this person, I can't say whether or not they were a Trump voter, but it was clearly someone who wanted to antagonize me from the language they were using. So finally, I was like, you know what? Don't come for me. Don't come for me. You don't want to do that. And I was like, I'm not going to sit here and entertain this any further. But I actually got heated about it. And I debated with myself. I screen captured all of it, but then just before I was about to post all of this to the Instagram stories, I thought, okay, wait, if I do that, am I contributing to the problem, or am I just calling someone out? I struggled with that. I eventually decided not to post all the screen caps, but I went on Instagram Live and explained myself, and I explained the whole story. And I decided I was not going to put this person on blast, but this was someone from within the belly fetish community, you know?
It's almost worth even asking when we have those moments like that. It's like, was his ultimate goal to be put on blast? Because some people do just antagonize because they just want to be considered. They just want to be thought of. They want to be in your head. Like, it's mad that some people do that.
That's honestly how I feel about all these people that have engaged with, them writers and articles and all that stuff.
So I find these very interesting. And I think we kind of touched on this, that we were going to talk a little bit about this. So there have been, for listeners, a number of articles over the years that have come out that have spoken to some extent on the concept of gaming. Now, majority of these are written by people who have a high followership, are well known, and generally speaking, when the news of these articles comes back to the main feed on Grommr, it tends to be met with a lot of mixed reviews, very passionately so. There's tens on either side of the debate. And I think the thing we really wanted to hone in on this podcast was there was actually an article that came out after the most recent one. So it's the now new most recent one, written by someone who didn't have that many followers, but was more like a very intense, somewhere between a love letter and a description of masculine pain. It was quite an intense read, but it was beautiful. I'm referring to the article written in GQ by the person, I won't say their name, but it was a very beautiful article, and it really hit home to a lot of points on where a lot of gamers struggle and what motivates a lot of us. And it was just a very, very well written piece. And I think something that we discussed amongst, everyone, of course, they chat, they sort of go, what do we think about this, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think what it really brought up to me is what people were getting upset about was actually about something else. They weren't necessarily getting upset about an article. or that article. What it kind of felt like overall people were getting upset about was the concept that this is how the world was being introduced to our community, was by the intent of a few. And that intent was very self-focused and not about what we're like as a people and what we do as a community. And so that that we need more of is community. We need more people talking about the community as a whole. This GQ article succeeds in that. The intent of this podcast, for God's sakes, is also an intent to achieve that by having diverse guests and people to talk about these points. But I say all this to ask, what else on an individual personal basis can we do? Keoki?
I don't go live too often, but like I was live recently and I wanted everyone to see my best friend. And, you know, I was met with like a lot of happy comments and stuff like that. You know, it's like he cooks for me all the time. And I love that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I just wanted to share my bestie with everybody that I've met here. And he's not even in the community, but he knows I'm in it. He accepts me for everything. I feel like that's what I wanted people to see, was like, he knows that I'm in this community and he doesn't think I'm a terrible person. He loves me for everything. And I really felt like maybe that's what I wanted people to realize of the reactions that people outside of the community were going to have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. You wanted to share the community with someone. It wasn't about them being a part of who and what we are, but it's showcasing that there's so much more that connects us to everything else than just the people within itself. You know, I think gainers sometimes forget that we're not like a unique fetish in the world. We actually share borders with body positivity. We share borders with the bear and chub chaser communities. We share borders with macro, with a lot of kink, really. You know, there's a lot of gainers who love leather, who love pup stuff. Like, we're not an island of no one else could understand us but ourselves. Like,
yeah,
we're actually very relatable. And
I was going to say that as far as what people can do on an individual basis, it's a tricky thing to answer, because for people that are willing to be out in the open about it, I would say they, you know, just keep being strong with that and be who you are. You know, you don't have to make it all about gaining all the time, because you're not one-dimensional. But there are people who don't feel comfortable being open about it yet. It might take them some time to get there, or they may never want to get there. We have spoken to people before who have said that they enjoy the fact that it's more secretive. They kind of like the fact that it's something that is, you know, not only their own, but, you know, that there's a small enough pool that they feel like this is a warm, dark, safe place where I can feel like I'm totally myself. So community is it's all a part of being, it's diversity, it's ideas, it's creativity, it's being who you are and being genuine about it. And I think if we just stay strong in that, and we offer support to those who maybe don't want to be as out, as vocal, as present, or as, you know, in the view.
It sounds to me like you're making a point that, you know, there are those of us who are comfortable being in the public eye. There are those of us who aren't. And whatever the way forward is, those of us who are maybe more visible need to make sure that we're protecting those who would rather remain invisible.
Exactly.
Things that we seem to be discussing really seems to point to talking to other people. And I think maybe that's the main point of it. You know, I think a lot of us have friends who we're comfortable with within the gainer community, but maybe we need to make more friends. And listen, if your friend group is made up of all white people, like, you should diversify that and like
broaden your horizons.
Get
for
to
sure.
know some new people. Like, I've been on a recent spat of following so many more people of color, because like my Instagram, I made to a point where the people that I followed were like, it's basically just people that I know. And there were people of color on it, and that's not so much a problem. But I wanted to take a step back and look at it all and be like, there's still a majority of white people on here. And if I'm only following people that I know, the trickle-in effect of other people, it's very, very slow. So why not be more proactive? So that's my personal response to that.
Yeah.
initiative to try to follow more people, meet new people, make new friends. And you know what? It's been working. Funny that you put the effort in, you see returns on efforts. So
I would even say, when I had seen a story, James, that you had posted saying that you wanted to share more, people of colors, artists, all that stuff. Like you wanted to boost them because, that's what needs to be happening, is because it just breaks my heart that like we're, I just want people to be like, just remind yourself that like, we're human, we have emotions. Like just take a step back. It's not hard. Before you fly off the handle and hit that send button, just take a step back. Just a second, breathe.
Yeah. Taking a moment to reassess. Does anyone have any closing remarks?
Just spread the love. Spread love, because love's the enemy of hate and education is the enemy of ignorance. And just talk to each other. You're going to find out that you have a lot more in common, and just don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick. You don't have to attack someone. You don't have to make demands on people. It's not okay. Society is evolving quickly, and thank God that it is. So just spread the love, stop the hate.
Keoki, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure having you.
Before we go, is there anything that you would like to plug? Anything that you would like to promote?
Yes.
Just you two. I mean, honestly, like I'm so inspired. I love that this is what's going to be happening. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing more of this. Like this is amazing.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
You're allowing people to speak for themselves without any kind of like agenda. And I love that.
It's very humbling and touching to hear things like that, because like I said, I do hold myself to a certain standard. I do want to be good representation for this community. So I'm glad that it's coming across. I'm really glad that it's coming across.
So, Keoki, where can we find you?
I'm on Grommr under porkerposey. Instagram's the same with just underscore between porkerposey. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, that's like a wrap it for now on Thicc Radio. As always, you can find me on Grommr and Instagram at stannnum, and Twitter and YouTube at stannnum.bsky.
You can find me on Instagram as thiccymouse with an underscore between thicky and mouse. You can find me on Twitter also as thiccymouse, and you can find me on Grommr as Orpheus.
Fantastic. And of course, you can find out more about who we are, what we do, and what we're talking about on the pod at Thicc Radio. And of course, Patreon at Thicc Radio. So that's it. Until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Enter app podcast produced by Stan and Thicky Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Spotify.